Good morning from the Freedom of Information and Privacy Association. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, and this is your Access and Privacy Online News Summary for Saturday, June 28th. We have some updates on Bill C2 and Bill C4 as the House of Commons rises for the summer. We'll have our regular scan across the country with a surprising group of stories in Alberta, echoing influences from south of the border, including moves by the provincial government to ban books and access to information, showing how one elected official says one thing publicly while working for corporate interests behind the scenes. And we'll end with two international stories, including the Pope's views on artificial intelligence and the steps one country is taking to fight crime with weaponized police drones. Let's dive in. As Parliament heads into summer recess, public scrutiny of two key federal bills continues to grow. Bill C4 may be framed as an affordability measure, but it also makes amendments that exempt federal political parties from federal and provincial privacy law and allows them to collect and use personal information without independent oversight and accountability. FIPA has been engaged on this issue extensively. This week sees a recent op-ed by Professor Sarah Bannerman in The Conversation. It lays out 4 strong reasons why this is a dangerous precedent, creating a threat to Canada's sovereignty, its future, and that it enables secret data collection that can be dangerous in the wrong hands. Meanwhile, Bill C2, the so-called border bill, is also raising red flags for privacy and civil liberties. Questions have been raised over how any new information sharing plans would comply with Canada's policy on tabling treaties in Parliament. The bill also mentions the possibility that people in Canada may be compelled to disclose information by the laws of a foreign state. FIPA and over 300 other organizations are calling for its withdrawal, warning it paves the way for mass data sharing with U.S. agencies, potentially exposing Canadians' personal information without adequate protections. Government messaging focuses on fentanyl interdiction, but that claim doesn't hold up under expert scrutiny. The bill would remove barriers that prevent police from searching mail to advance a criminal investigation, where authorized to do so under the law, and expand Canada Post's inspection authority to open mail. Both bills are now paused until the fall, but the fight for appropriate considerations of privacy, transparency, and accountability is far from over. Be sure to check out FIPA's links in the show notes for more information. Next, let's take a look at some important developments across Canada. In Nova Scotia Power is now expanding its offer of free credit monitoring following a major cyber attack that disrupted internal systems and compromised customer data. The utility initially drew criticism for its limited response, but increased pressure led to broader support for affected individuals. On top of that, the utility says it no longer asks customers for social insurance numbers to authenticate their identities and has deleted the numbers from records. Over in Newfoundland, an access to information request revealed that some hydrogen firms in the province are behind on their utility bills, calling into question the hype surrounding this particular green energy investment in the region. 6 energy companies owed a collective total of about $22.1 million in Crown Land reserve fees for 2024. The province collected just $8.4 million, according to figures obtained through access to information legislation. At Queen's Park, the Ontario Integrity Commissioner found that Doug Ford's government used code words to obscure Greenbelt discussions in internal records, raising serious concerns about transparency and public trust. According to the commissioner's report, political staff were using code words to thwart document requests and, quote, left a surprisingly small paper trail for such a consequential policy, end quote. According to that, she wrote that a number of Freedom of Information appeals her office received on Greenbelt-related requests revealed concerning systemic issues. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Carney has stated that he has no intention to directly intervene in addressing the issues around the long-abandoned 24 Sussex Drive, despite questions about heritage and spending. A document detailing expenses for 24 Sussex, obtained via Information Access Law, shows that upkeep of the building cost taxpayers more than $680,000 between January 2018 and June 2023. Separately, a new review of Canada's access to information regime has been launched, but experts and advocates warn it is already flawed. Without addressing long-standing structural issues, the review risks becoming yet another missed opportunity for real reform. Experts are calling for an expansion of the law, the removal of loopholes, stricter timelines for responses, and more resources to make the system work. The government has consistently opted to focus on better administration of the law, not changes to the legislation, which hasn't been fully overhauled since its passage more than 40 years ago. Next, we see a cluster of stories from Alberta. The conversation reports that youth in Alberta could be facing reduced access to LGBTQ+ content in school libraries, with book bans and restrictions disproportionately affecting marginalized voices due to a new proposal from the provincial government. This plan to ban books would be accompanied by increased parental input on education materials. Advocates say the move undermines the rights of young people to see themselves reflected in public institutions. Meanwhile, from LJI reporter Drew Anderson at the Narwhal brings us a report from documents obtained through access to information. They show that Alberta's last-minute expansion of cougar hunting quotas was not based on science, but rather on internal political pressure. This directly contradicts denials made by the Forestry and Parks Minister Todd Loewen, who lashed out at his opposition critic in the legislature earlier this year when she suggested he was not taking science and data into account. In a separate report informed by details revealed by access requests, George Lee, LJI reporter at the McLeod Gazette, brings us insights from disability advocates in the province. As wildfires and climate disasters continue, critics argue the province is failing people with disabilities. The NDP says emergency planning still excludes vulnerable residents, compounding the risks they face. According to the reports, there is no comprehensive legislation that sets out clear principles to ensure a consistent approach to accessibility. Among the provinces, only Prince Edward Island and Alberta don't have an Accessibility Act. Through the Accessible Canada Act of 2019, the federal government is pushing for a barrier-free Canada by 2040. Finally, Brett McKay, LJ reporter at the Investigative Journalism Foundation, brings us a troubling example of political double-dealing, as access to information documents reveal that Airdrie's mayor, Peter Brown, actively supported a controversial private health center behind the scenes, even as he publicly denied involvement. Despite claiming he did not help develop a proposal for the center, documents reveal he helped craft and pitch plans. The emails also show Brown shared early proposal drafts with a contract in the Premier's office and took steps to conceal his role in the project from the public and members of Airdrie City Council. The gap between public statements and private actions raises serious questions about accountability in local governance. Shifting to the cybersecurity front, we start with a massive leak. Researchers at Cyber News have uncovered that over 10 billion login credentials have been dumped online, representing one of the largest breaches of personal data ever recorded. The total number of passwords leaked totaled 16 billion, which is double the number of people on Earth, signaling that impacted consumers may have had credentials for more than one account leaked. It's also important to note that the leaked login information doesn't span from a single source, such as one breach targeting a company, but was compiled over time. There are also bound to be duplicates in the data. In the United States, insurance giant Aflac has detected suspicious activity on its network, with possible exposure of sensitive data, including Social Security numbers. According to the company, the activity was shut down within hours, but they have not yet determined how many people were affected. The headquarters said it will offer free credit monitoring and identity theft protection and medical shield for 24 months to anyone that calls its call center. While an American company, it's always important to highlight that any Canadians who interact with this U.S. business may also be affected. Back in Canada, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear a long-running privacy case against Facebook, focused on how the tech giant handled user data. Facebook applied for a hearing at the Supreme Court, arguing the Court of Appeal took the wrong approach to consent and security safeguards under privacy law last year. Last year's ruling overturned a 2023 federal court ruling. The case could clarify privacy obligations and enforcement under Canadian law. And finally, a joint investigation into the 23andMe data breach finds that the company failed to implement adequate safeguards, exposing sensitive genetic and ancestry information. As an example of this, customers could opt for a feature that allowed them to share information with genetic relatives. If this feature was activated, personal information accessible to the hacker could also include the data of thousands of other individuals to whom the owner of the compromised account was genetically linked. Regulators in both the United States and Canada are now demanding stricter controls on how biometric and health data are stored and secured. And now to the United States, where Trump-era decisions on surveillance, immigration, and judicial appointments continue to shape privacy and access issues. In Louisiana, state officials have launched investigations into CVS for sending deceptive mass text messages to customers, allegedly in an attempt to sway legislation. The now failed bill would have banned ownership of both drugstores and pharmacy benefit managers. CVS owns both. Now, Louisiana has filed several lawsuits against CVS for misusing customer information. These lawsuits highlight the growing tension between corporate lobbying and consumer rights. At the federal level, a whistleblower claims that a Trump judicial nominee advised lawyers to ignore deportation court orders. According to the whistleblower, during a meeting regarding plans to invoke the Alien Enemies Act over what the president claimed was an invasion by a Venezuelan gang, a Justice Department official suggested Trump may have to tell the court to F themselves. The nominee denies the allegation, but the story underscores the erosion of legal norms under this administration. Meanwhile, broader data sets that intersect immigrants continue to be potentially misused. Reports show that Medicaid enrollment data was shared with deportation officials. California senators are demanding an end to this practice. An internal memo and emails obtained by the Associated Press show that Medicaid officials unsuccessfully sought to block the data transfer, citing legal and ethical concerns. The enrollment data included immigration status, which will aid Trump with his sweeping immigration crackdown. In Illinois, authorities are investigating how license plate tracking data was used by police to target a woman who had an abortion, raising grave concerns about post-Roe surveillance. The Illinois Secretary of State called the investigation after learning a Chicago police department violated state law by sharing data from automatic license plate readers with a Texas sheriff seeking a woman who had an abortion. The Secretary of State is also creating an audit system to ensure police departments don't run afoul of a 2023 law banning the distribution of license plate data to track women seeking abortions or to find undocumented immigrants. These stories reflect an ongoing trend of increasing data misuse, selective enforcement, and disregard for civil liberties, all with implications for Canadians watching closely from the other side of the border. Two international stories close out this week. First, Pope Leo XIV has raised ethical concerns about artificial intelligence, particularly its impact on the intellectual and spiritual development of children. He's calling for global discussions on how emerging technologies affect the most vulnerable in society, and what role faith communities should play in shaping their development. He warns specifically that new generations are most at risk, given they have never had such quick access to information. And in Mexico, police in the state of Chiapas have unveiled weaponized drones to combat organized crime. These armed aerial units mark a significant and worrying escalation in the militarization of policing. The drones are meant to combat cartels that are themselves using heavy guns and drones that drop improvised explosive devices. Experts warn the technology could pose serious human rights risks if it's not tightly regulated. As always, we hope you found today's stories helpful in staying informed about the latest issues surrounding privacy, information management, and public transparency. To help us keep the mics on, be sure to subscribe through FIPA News Monitoring or consider a donation. Our writer is Sean Fisk. Original music in today's show was composed by the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. I'm Patrick Farnsworth, your host and producer. Thank you for joining. A big FIPA thank you to all the contributors, reporters, and outlets that make this podcast possible, and to you, our listeners, who help make this a success. Stay safe and stay informed.